And from domestic violence and truancy to confronting the juvenile crime head-on, the state's attorney's office has been at the forefront advocating for victims and holding offenders accountable. Some of the most pressing issues facing our society today fall in the lap of our studio guest.
Yes, and joining us now in the studio here for a candid conversation is State's Attorney Aisha Braveboy, and thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be back in this wonderful studio.
Yes, so tell me a little bit. You just heard from Delegate Acevedo some of his concerns about where this bill was going or the changes that were being made to a 2022 law. You were there in support of the newer law.
Absolutely. You know, I think that the voices that we have heard were those of our constituents. They're very concerned about young people who are committing offenses in our community. And everyone wants accountability. We want the best for our young people. We don't want them in the justice system, but we do want to make sure that they don't commit further crimes. And how do we do that? I think by holding them accountable is one of the best ways.
I've heard you speak many times in the past. You'll talk about truancy, linking it to child crimes. What's that link, and how do you treat one without treating the other?
Well, the truth is you shouldn't, and you kind of can't. You know, you have to do both together. Truancy, we know, is one of those factors when we look at individuals who are committing, especially the most serious offenses. When we look at, you know, their school records, what we find as a commonality is that they have not been in school consistently. And so we do need to address that issue because it is against the law for a young person not to be in school. So that's the first law that is broken. And then when they are not in school, they're not learning, they're not on a pathway to success. So what are they doing? Oftentimes they're out committing carjackings, robberies, and other issues in our community. So, I mean, we have to do both. We have to do both.
So in that case, should parents be held accountable? Absolutely,
and that is what we are doing. We have a great partnership with our new CEO or Superintendent, Dr. House of the school system. We have worked with him to launch a truancy pilot program where we are getting cases of young people who are committing truancy violations a lot sooner than we would in the traditional process. Sometimes in that process, it would take maybe 60 to 90 days of them being truant to finally get to our office. Now, once an individual is identified as having missed 10% or more of school time, their parents get a notification. And these are at select schools. We're trying this out as a pilot program. Their parents get notification, an invitation to come to a meeting with us. We explain the law. We explain that there are resources available in our communities to assist them in complying with the law. And if they don't comply with the law, we are filing those cases. So our first event was held at Bladensburg High School. What we have learned from the pupil personnel workers was that a lot of students did return to school. For those who did not, we have filed petitions in our juvenile court to bring those parents and children to court to account for their absences.
Now, this really came to be highlighted in the Baby K case. Can you tell us just briefly what that was and why?
Yeah, so that was the case, unfortunately, where a young student here in Prince George's County boarded a school bus with two other individuals and attempted to shoot and kill another student. We prosecuted that case, and as you know, he pled guilty recently. But in looking at his background, what we found was that he was really not in school consistently for a long period of time. And so that is a problem not only for him, but also for his parents, because his parents should have assured that he was in school. And if they are having problems, or if any parent is having problems getting their children in school, they need to let someone know. There are resources there available to assist parents with getting their children to comply with the law. But what is not okay is not to comply with the law and to ignore the problem.
So I understand you've worked closely with Baltimore State's Attorney Ivan Bates. Talk about that a little bit.
Well, we found that we had a lot in common. Not only are we both graduates of Howard, he went to undergrad, I went to law school there, but we face a lot of the same issues with respect to young people in our communities. Carjackings are on the rise, the use of handguns in the commission of offenses, or just young people with handguns. So it's a big issue in both of our jurisdictions. So what we decided to do was partner together to work in Annapolis to fight for changes in our juvenile law laws, as well as other bills that we think will help to protect our respective communities. And so far, we've been pretty successful. And so, of course, there are a couple of bills we're still waiting to see what happens with, but we are very happy with the changes that have been proposed by both the House and the Senate when it comes to our juvenile laws. And whichever version of the bill pass, or if they come up with something new, it's going to be better than where we are now. So we're pretty pleased about that.
Okay.
And we are going to have you back in just a moment. We're going to take a quick break.
We're continuing our conversation with State's Attorney Aisha Braveboy. But let me ask a quick question here. A lot of carjacking, some involving 12, 13-year-olds, should they be tossed in jail?
So the juvenile justice system really is about rehabilitation. So when you say tossed in jail, that doesn't really happen in the real world. What happens is the Department of Juvenile Services, once a child is arrested, will make a decision on whether or not that child should be detained or any conditions that they should be released under pre-merits hearing. So that's really what it's about. The question is, ultimately, is the community safe if this child is out pre-merits? Can they be out on certain conditions, whether it's ankle monitor or they have to visit programs or get counseling or whatever conditions that the Department of Juvenile Services deems appropriate? They make the initial decision. If they are released, then they wait for their merits hearing. If they are detained, then a judge sees them the next judicial day to determine whether or not they should remain detained or if they should be released. So I think this idea that like all of these kids just go, going to be locked up, that's just not what happens in the real world. We
want to touch upon domestic violence a little bit. We've seen an increase talking about domestic violent murders and that involve family situations. Yes. How is your office involved?
So we are very involved. Domestic violence is near and dear to me. This issue, I lost a cousin to domestic violence. She was killed by her husband. So what we have thought through, I think, very well is how to address this issue of intimate partner violence. And I think the county has done a really good job of establishing agencies like our Family Justice Center to really address intimate partner violence. We went to Annapolis, made strangulation a first-degree felony, and my office established a strangulation protocol, which strangulation is the most lethal form of domestic violence, but that often involves intimate partners. What I think we all now have to shift our conversation to is this other familial relationships that end up in violence. So last year we had more than double the number of homicides that involved intimate partners than other family relationships. So I think we had about 6 or 7 intimate partner homicides, but we had 14 other familial relationships that turn into not only violence, but ultimate tragedy, which is death. So we are very focused now on messaging around family violence in a way that will capture these other relationships. So we have a work group going on right now with our sheriff's department, our police department, and a number of nonprofit stakeholders where we are going to be launching a messaging program around domestic violence that does not involve intimate partners, because what we're finding is that a lot of those situations that end up turning into violence involve individuals who have mental health issues. And so you can't say to a parent, leave, right? You don't have to stay. You can leave your minor child. That's not practical, right? So if the minor child is the individual who is the abuser in the home or exhibiting abusive, acts in the home, then how do we help that family? Because we can't tell a parent to leave their child. That's not practical. We also have siblings who have had arguments that have turned into homicides. We've had parents who've killed their children, and that's not normal. These are individuals who are suffering from severe mental health issues. We address them, obviously, in the criminal justice system by holding them accountable, but we shouldn't let it get there. There's something that we can do in between the tragedy and when they first start exhibiting this behavior. We have to, I think, respond differently, and we have to have those institutions in our community that we need, like long-term mental health treatment facilities where people can get care.
We're going to have to bring you back on here so we can talk a little bit more next time. There's a lot more to go with that. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
It's for you. For more information about any of these programs or initiatives we spoke about today,
You can go to the Office of the State's Attorney website at pgsao.org.